How does a fintech achieve unicorn status by focusing on the American savings gap?
Oh my gosh, this is a massive, massive market. Half of Americans aren't saving.
And what does future growth look like for a fintech who has already achieved such remarkable success?
I still feel like we're just barely scratching the surface of where we can go with this business.
On this episode of Growth Leaders of Wealth Management, I'm speaking with Schumm, the founder and CEO of Vestwell, alongside Lori Hardwick, chairwoman and board director, Logan Allin, also a board director, and Doug Magnolia, chief customer officer and president of Vestwell State Savings. From exploring noteworthy growth milestones,
they now have over 1.1 million savers in a very short time, 7 years,
to building a platform primed for future growth opportunities.
If you're not capturing them today, you're not probably going to get them later on.
Join me as we dive into Vestwell's mission to close the savings gap in America. That's right now on Growth Leaders of Wealth Management. For Schumm, the founder and CEO of Vestwell, the creation of the company came from a very simple question.
Why can't we distill a simplified way to engage in retirement savings? And really in the notion of, focus on small, mid-sized businesses in the 401k landscape, but doing it through the medium of advisors as the engagement mechanism. And looking at and saying, hey, how do we actually equip advisors to have conversations where they can create guidance, yet not necessarily be on the hook for all of the fiduciary responsibility? I think that's where advisors kind of step back when you said, hey, tell me what I should do here. It was like, when you go to your, for everyone who's worked at a larger company, right? And they roll out their health benefits and you're sitting in that room doing your, here's all your benefits. And you're like, okay, what should I do? And they're like, we can't tell you.
You have no idea.
And you kind of look at it like, well, no, tell me what I should do because this is not my world. So that was kind of what I wanted to solve through a digital medium with the platform itself.
As with other founders I've interviewed on Growth Leaders, Aaron's vision grew from a personal experience and stemmed into a meaningful business purpose. And Aaron is equally decorated for his leadership. He was recently put out by EY as Entrepreneur of the Year and named Visionary of the Year at the NYC Tech Awards. Aaron is a skilled marketer and has a reputation for being more accessible than the average fintech CEO. Even so, the extent to which Vestwell has been able to grow beyond the original vision of solving the workplace savings and investing gap through 401ks is nothing short of remarkable. The company's initial vision to tackle that savings gap through small to mid-sized employer retirement plans evolved into an innovative fintech that is expanding the aperture of savings, from workplace programs to state-sponsored programs, including Education Savings Account, 529 plans, ABLE programs, state-sponsored RIAs, and soon emergency savings plans. Doug Magnolia is president of Vestwell State Savings and chief customer officer. Let's listen in as he talks us through Vestwell's capabilities to support the American saver.
I'm thinking specifically of what we like to consider our workplace business, which is really our defined contribution, record-keeping services, coupled with these state opportunities. And that's our 529 business for college education, our 529 business for people with disabilities, also known as ABLE, and the auto IRA state-mandated retirement programs. Now, we've since been able to start to, identify and see opportunities and synergies for those two capabilities. And what we've done over the past, I'd say, 10 months is start to reposition the firm, frankly, away from being known as purely a digital record keeper and starting to think of ourselves more holistically as a platform to help people save for different purposes, arguably targeted towards small businesses, because that's what I think is the nuanced trick here, is focusing on distribution through a small business marketplace. And that's what our partners are interested in. We are a, powered by kind of construct. It's not really, Vestwell is not the primary determinant in terms of brand. It's really our partners' name, their brand, their ability to reach that small business owner and ultimately to the employees that work there. That's what's interesting to them, is the connective tissue that we bring to enable them to go after, a segment of the market that frankly most large financial firms kind of left to the sides.
So is that target market sort of the heart of the synergies that you're talking about, even whether it's on the state side or on the workplace side? It's that everyone it's all about small businesses and empowering them to help their employees save better.
That's exactly right. I mean, depending on who you pull your stats from, 30 plus million people in this country, have very little savings to the name, where they don't have access to an employer-backed retirement program. That tends to be your small to occasionally mid-sized company. Most mid-sized companies and on up offer 401k that most people are familiar with, right? But there's a lot of people in this country that work for small businesses. Actually, the majority of them do. And a lot of those businesses do not offer a retirement plan whatsoever. And so that's a huge population that is not saving for retirement. And then if you look at other statistics about the average, worker in this country that can't even afford an emergency payment to fix the car, or, they're definitely living paycheck to paycheck. So that means, no emergency savings, very little ability to save for retirement, if at all. And so how do you change that? The states are faced with that problem in a slightly different perspective. They see it in terms of people showing up at hospitals, going to the emergency room instead of going to their doctor. And the hospital doesn't turn anybody away. They provide the services. Those bills end up coming back to the state. So they're trying to head off an economic crisis at the state level by getting people to be better financially equipped and prepared for a future that is, woefully uncertain for them. And so that's their goal. And if you're on the private sector side, a wealth management firm, you're a large broker dealer, wirehouse, or registered investment advisor, you probably were not interested in this demographic up until maybe 3 or 4 or 5 years ago. But the mass affluent, the high net worth, and the ultra high net worth, well catered for. Right. Whether you're a Fidelity, you're a Schwab, or Morgan Stanley, or UBS, Merrill Lynch, whatever, you're well covered in this country. People are actively trying to pursue your business. They're trying to help you, et cetera, et cetera. But if you're not in those, if you're low to moderate income, there's not a lot of people knocking down your door trying to sell you financial services products. Now, maybe there are, but that, I think, is the trick, frankly, that for a lot of these large firms, they realize that roll the calendar forward like a generational shift, 20 plus years. We're just at the beginnings of this large wealth transfer that's going to take place for the next 20 plus years of boomer wealth, down to Gen X and to some millennials as well. So if you're not capturing some of those future customers who may not qualify for you today, if you're not capturing them today, you're not probably going to get them later on. So I think people are realizing that not all of that wealth is going to go to, someone who's already an account holder. Absolutely. And so how do you reach that next generation customer? So that's this kind of ability that we can do for them, is to provide the ability to go after that segment at scale and efficiently and in a cost-effective manner that they probably wouldn't be able to do themselves. And one of the things that kind of, I think, differentiates us relative to the larger, digital retirement providers in these spaces, we've always focused on third parties as the path to go. So advisors, RIAs, et cetera, aggregators, et cetera. That's who we want to partner. And so we kind of stuck to that for the most part. And then in concert with them, figuring out and spending the time with them to think strategically about what is most important to them over the next 3 to 5 years, and then 5 to 10. And then how are we working together to make sure that we're able to deliver the capability that they need or think they want to have over that time frame, and do that in a smart way. So things like, emergency savings, which we're just in pilot right now. Is anybody going to make a lot of money offering emergency savings accounts to people? That's even more small balance accounts. There's not really a great revenue opportunity there. However, it's actually a critical component to the idea of helping people close the savings gap,
right?
Particularly for that low and moderate income employee who is, maybe more often than not living paycheck to paycheck. It's a really valuable service to them, and can start to form the basis of, for most people who this could be their first account they ever have. Right? They may not even have a retirement account. Then you maybe get them to start putting money into a retirement account once they have a little bit of a sidecar, if you will, investment put to the side that's there for them to use when they need it and won't disrupt them from taking down out of their retirement account. Same thing, we made an acquisition from Morgan Stanley, the Gratify business, for student loan repayments. Right? If you were to think of what are the biggest financial burdens facing this country, credit card debt, student loan debt. Right? Debatable one and two, but the numbers are staggering how much people owe. If they're too busy, stressed out about just being able to pay those bills, they're definitely not worried about the other things that probably have a longer term impact. So trying to figure out what are the right tools to, integrate into that saver's life that are needed that they need at that particular point in time.
The Vestwell vision is focused on reaching the most savers as efficiently as possible. They do this through bank, asset, and wealth management partnerships, and also through public plans. Here's Logan Allin. He's a board director for Vestwell and shared with me why Fin Capital continues to invest in the business.
North Star continues to be the saver, right? That end consumer, whether they're at a pension plan in a state or they're working at an employer. Aaron really focused so acutely on the end consumer and their needs, and that translated into obviously the portal experience, how they make investment selections, how they onboard. The whole UX and experience was just so much fundamentally better than what you typically get from a 401k provider, which can be super clunky and challenging. I think that focus led them also to just being really thoughtful on the product and the engineering side and wanting to own the entire tech stack. Like they built everything from the portfolio accounting component in the back office all the way through to those front office solutions for the employers, the plan administrators, and the end savers. And that is so fundamental to success, because then you don't have any kind of outside technologies that you're relying on that could potentially erode that experience or create risk for the business on the technology side. I think the other aspect is that he recognized that B2B2C is a massively more efficient channel from a scale perspective than trying to go direct to consumers and creating yet another 401k direct to consumer offering. And for us, that was fundamental to our view on the potential success and impact and scale of this business. And they've talked very publicly about all of the large bank and asset management partnerships that they have. And that has also been really critical. And that means, though, that you've got to have a tight integration with those partners, and you've got to have a go-to-market approach with them that makes them effective at effectively reselling you. And they've done a really incredible job at that. And many of those partners are investors and on our board as well. And then I would say culture is incredibly important. And that starts at the top, and the way that Aaron has driven his culture and the way he's recognized other people on the team is terrific. And now that they're getting bigger, that's going to become even more important to create that consistency in culture and values. And from our perspective, that is what differentiates a lot of our best performing companies, is that we're really able to maintain that culture on a long-term basis, which is saver focused, very humble, no ego, and just all about execution and getting stuff done.
Lori Hardwick is Vestwell's chairwoman and board director. And can I just quickly say how inspiring it is to be interviewing the chairwoman of a unicorn fintech business?
I want to just say that Vestwell clearly stands apart from the pack in a lot of instances. They not just in the growth and the expectation of valuation and how we've grown the company overall, but really in its leadership and its team and its culture. It is really special. It's a really special company. And one of the things that I think brings the company together in a unique way is they all have a very clear eye towards the vision and the mission of the company. And that is to close the savings gap in America. So it's a great mission to have, and they've made massive progress. They now have over 1.1 million savers in a very short time, 7 years. But what also makes it different from some of the other companies I work with is it has a very diverse group of investors. We have clients as investors. We have some very large fintech private equity companies as investors, and we've got angel investors who've kind of brought us along the way.
Traditionally, 401k plans have been an afterthought for banks and businesses. They weren't considered areas that could drive long-term wealth management capabilities or build close relationships with new clients. Vestwell has helped change all that by building a configurable technology and by continuing to seek out new partnerships that get them closer to the saver. They also adapt their technology regularly to ensure the investment process is smoother and easier, regardless of who they are working with.
Vestwell has a lot of constituents that it serves. And so we're not just going B2C or even B2B. It's B2C to C to B in a lot of cases. So we have this multifaceted client list that we really need to make sure we're satisfying. And so when you put that in context of how we've grown and been able to appeal to all of the different sectors, including, advisors, certainly, the firm level of advisors like a Morgan Stanley or JP Morgan, and then the advisors themselves, educating them on the platform, training, working on all of that. The end participants were always educating the end savers on what is a 401k plan, how can they save for the future, and then along the other side, we've got businesses. Over 50,000 businesses in all shapes and sizes that are offering 401k plans to their employee base. And then TPAs, we've got payroll, we've got government agencies, a lot of them actually, on our state savings plans. So mashing that all together and looking at it as holistically as you can, and you really can't treat them the same. That's the magic, and what I think Aaron and his team are doing is making each of them feel very special. We know they have unique needs, and we know they all have savers on the other side that need access to a platform to make it easier. But I do think that taking a look at where we've come over the last 7 years, over 30 billion of assets under administration now. Aaron had a very clear vision from the start on how he was going to build this company. And part of that was just looking at what a mess the retirement industry was, with all these various pieces and, record keepers and payroll distribution. And, there were a lot of advisors that I think could have really benefited and given something extra to their business owners that they're serving on the other side of the world, to say, look, I can work with you on your 401k plan. But because it was such a mess and very, very complex, so many advisors never took the leap or tried to figure it out. They just didn't feel like having the headache of it all. And so when you step back and look at what Vestwell really has done, it's allowed for that streamlining of the process for advisors and business owners to make it easy to roll out these plans to their participants and feel like they are doing something great for those participants and those savers. And obviously, most most people who rate their companies as a great place to work for, that includes benefits such as 401k. So it allows for everyone to feel good in the process, but simplifying that process has been key to our success. And one of the things that has been really remarkable is the way they've built the platform, and the technology itself is very configurable. So it allows us to use the same core technology and configure it different ways
Mm.
based on the
Mhm.
different constituencies. And that has really played out well. In some cases, firms need managed accounts or access to money management. Other cases, they don't need it because they provide that on their own, for example. And so being able to toggle on and off all of these different levels of configuration to make each platform really uniquely theirs at a advisor level is part of the secret sauce of kind of how we've been able to serve so many different clients at once, and it clearly just proves out the growth we've been able to have.
Since Vestwell's founding in 2016, there have been many meaningful growth inflection points. One growth marker I was intrigued by is that since the start of 2022, Vestwell has won every contract awarded to a record keeper by state savings plans. Vestwell is now the administrator to more than 30 state savings programs and 75% of state auto RIA plans. Wow. What does Vestwell CEO Aaron Schumm reflect on as the most meaningful growth inflection points?
When we started this business, I was adamant that I did not want to build a record keeper. I was like, the world doesn't need more record keeping, right? I was like, there's players out there, they have their faults, but we can kind of work around that. I was wrong, totally wrong in that. And the more I had lived in the space and our team and going through the processes that are required in this, I was like, well, this won't work to the level we want to take it to unless we just build it ourselves. So that was kind of a point of reckoning where I was like, okay, we're just going to have to put our heads down and go build this thing. And it's going to be painful, but it's, on the other side of it, everyone's going to have a much better experience and engagement. That we successfully pulled off. That was probably one of the most transformative pieces of, kind of the life of Vestwell. It took us about 2 years. And then literally over a weekend, we re-platformed it all. And ripped and replaced and did it all. And it was a little bit of a white knuckle, hang on for dear life. Let's see if this works. And it worked amazingly well, actually better than we had hoped and expected. So that was the moment, I think probably the biggest moment when I sat back and was like, oh, we have this. Like, this is ours right now. This is our space to actually drive. And the team did absolutely nailed it. We circled a date on the calendar 2 years out and actually delivered it on budget a month ahead of schedule, which is something like an entire re-architecture and re-platform of the entire underpinning of our business, right? That was a big thing. Then there were a couple of big partnerships that I think were pretty transformative. Whether it was when we first brought on Morgan Stanley and rolled that out, and Morgan Stanley at Work, incredible partner of ours, on multiple facets of Vestwell. That was a little bit of, I think, where the industry kind of woke up. When they see those sort of things, like, oh wow, if they're doing this, then
Right.
why aren't we? So that has really helped catalyze our business. I think also on the state side, when we brought on Oregon and the Oregon Saves Plan, that was another one that I think also drove a lot of our overall kind of business. And as we look at it, it also was eye-opening for me because we saw how all of these savings programs are so tightly correlated with one another. And then we could actually treat them in a similar fashion and be able to kind of expand the aperture of the savings landscape that we could serve. And then it was just like, wow, okay, we can go, beyond anywhere that we had initially fathomed in this space, now that kind of all of these things have distilled in our minds.
When it comes to hitting growth milestones and cultivating a healthy and thriving office culture, building the right team is so important.
When you build a business, it's you need the team around you, right? And you have to have kind of that clear picture of what you're going to do to execute against it. And when you have the team that can execute, you win. And that's really what it boiled down to, right? We have incredibly smart people, varying kind of, walks of life and kind of, areas of focus and kind of specialty. And when you bring all those together, you're like, okay, everyone check your ego at the door. Everyone's good at what they do. Now let's mash our heads together and stick the landing on it. And when you do that, that creates success. I mean, it's so easy to come up with ideas. Like having a vision is one thing, but if you can't execute on it, what's it matter? Right. So, anyone can spout off ideas like, oh, let's do this and do that. Like, okay, how are you actually going to get from A to B? And that's the hard part.
Aaron, from the very beginning, has shared equity throughout the company to the team. And that builds I mentioned they have alignment around the mission, but they also have alignment towards making Vestwell better every day because they are all owners of the company. And that has allowed for, this cultural feeling of let's always do the right thing for our clients. Let's always make sure they're coming back for more. Let's make sure that we have a great, platform. And if we have to stay late to get something done for someone, there's no problem in that because they want to do it. They really put their best foot forward every day. And I can see how that has made a massive difference when compared to other firms where equity is not shared throughout the whole team.
Fintech companies like Vestwell, or even Facet and Altruist, who appeared in earlier episodes, are looking to serve an underserved market. For Vestwell, that means working in the ed tech space as well. That's education technology. Their goal is to provide education resources to savers and workplaces to promote and foster financial literacy. They want to help savers answer questions like, where do I start? Or, I have no idea how to purchase my first home. What should I do? Here's Aaron.
The way I have always thought about things is like, it's not our job to be prescriptive to people, right? It is our job to give people the tools to make really educated, conscious decisions. Say, should I turn left or should I turn right? Right? What's best for me? And, it could be right to go either way, but it's our job to kind of lead them to say, well, if you go this way, this is what the outcome could look like. If you go this way, this is what the outcome could look like. And then people say, oh, okay, now I know what I want to do. And that's how, but I thought of it kind of when we started the business purely from like a 401k landscape, right? Think of just a 401k plan design, right? Which is wildly complicated on its own. And a small business owner saying, I have no idea what I want to do here. I don't know how I want to create eligibility or safe harbor rules and matching. That's kind of where we first started to deploy it. And then we took it to the end saver. And we wanted to start helping them through this, which, bleeds into like the financial wellness world, which has largely failed. And I think it's largely failed because financial wellness, I don't look at it as kind of a standalone business that will just runs because it's something people just expect. So, given that we're, a tech shop, we have the ability to build this and take all the data that's coming into the system and almost hyper personalize it and then start to guide people down these paths and say, hey, you could do this, or you could do this. You could save for education. You could save for this. And that's really important. But then the key to that is making it actionable.
Right.
And say, okay, now I know what I want to do it. Right. Where before people, in the wellness world, people would just be like, here's everything you could do, give us all your data, input it all. And says, okay, here's the things you can do. And then it was upon the person to go figure out how to actually go implement that, which then it just never happens.
Never happens. Right.
So I think we're in a really unique position because we can run all of these savings programs on one architecture, one infrastructure, and then create, not only the guidance and the education around it, but then actually go action on it and deploy it. And then all of a sudden it's actually happening real time for folks. it's all one place. You log in, you're like, I can see my health savings, my education savings, my retirement savings all in one place. And now I can start to layer all that in. And we know, how people are getting paid, when they get paid, where they live, right? All of these
Right.
data components. And now we're starting to build, and it's still in the works, but it's an AI like personal chatbot that basically can actually distill someone's information in real time, read it back to how they could think about this. And it's really, we do it on the employer side today, just for the questions like, hey, how do I think about, processing payroll for my employees or this or that? We handle all of that. And it's amazing. And we have, over 1,000 inquiries a day that come in that get handled by chatbots that are personalized for businesses, and now we'll take those to the end savers.
The market for retirement services alone is huge, and there are hundreds of providers in that space. But Doug Magnolia, the president of Vestwell State Savings, believes that serving the small end of the market effectively and efficiently is the magic.
The next iteration of that is as we are starting to pull together our different savings and investing tools to be distributed by that employer to that end employee. So instead of just having access to a 401k, maybe the employee, maybe they just had a baby, right? How do you educate them that the best thing they could do, not only for their retirement, but maybe for saving for their education of their child, is to open up a 529 account, right? And so now you've already got that data, you've already got payroll connectivity. It should be, hey, look this little video, learn about this, click a button, bingo bammo, I've got a 529 account and I'm putting 2% of my after-tax money every paycheck into that 529, right? Or I'm living paycheck to paycheck, I have this 401k, I'm really nervous, I'm thinking about reducing my contribution rate. How do you encourage them not to, or to do so to the amount that makes them feel comfortable, but such that maybe they don't give up the employer match, and maybe encourage them instead, create an emergency savings account. Give yourself a buffer, right? Take a little pressure off so that you're not, in a time of stress, taking a hardship loan out of your 401k, which happens all too often, right? And then you're pulling money out of the market, you're losing out on the compounding and so on and so forth. It's being able to provide multiple product sets to that same customer through the channel that we have. And so that's as we're building out this kind of holistic savings and investing capability. In an idealized world, we'd love that to get to the point where we can kind of think of it as the next best dollar. So if I've got a certain money that's coming in for my paycheck, there's the next best use of that dollar. Where should it go? Should it be to pay down credit card debt? Should it pay down student loan debt? Should it be to my 401k? Should it be to an HSA? Should it be to an emergency save? Most people in this country are financially illiterate. And so how do you help them without having to teach them all of these financial skills that very few people have, but do it in a way that's intuitive, easy for them to understand, and takes a lot of the difficult work out of it? Because most of the people in this segment of the market do not have a financial advisor.
Right.
And may not have a financial advisor ever.
Right.
But that doesn't mean they should not. In fact, if anybody needs to be saving, it's that segment of the market. So trying to figure out how can we take this platform that we're building with the partners that we're working with and deliver that simple, easy, experience to help them save when the time is right for the purposes that mean the most to them.
When it comes to tech-enabled financial literacy, Vestwell believes in providing the saver with the ability to understand why saving is important. Board Director Logan Allin says they should also know how to navigate asset allocation decisions and investment selection decisions. And with the right technology, those decisions and their personal values can be embedded into the user experience.
We think that is fundamental. You think about kind of the ed tech aspects of that Vestwell is building, and that repeatable content opportunity is so huge. And I think from our perspective, you've got to start with financial planning and education, make sure everybody's on the same playing field. And so I think that will continue and be very critical, particularly as they add new products. Like why should I contribute to a 529 plan?
Right.
And what is this student loan matching thing, and why is that important? Why is it important for me to pay down my student loans in this way, in a more accelerated way? Understanding interest payments, understanding debt, and managing that, and leverage ratios on an individual basis, and so forth. I think will create better long-term citizens and better long-term savers, and more success ultimately for people who are going into retirement, because we do have a retirement crisis as it relates to shortfall in savings and today, and we don't want to repeat that mess, obviously, going forward.
So, Vestwell is a fintech company with an ed tech bent whose mission is to lessen the savings gap in America and improve financial literacy. And they've had remarkable early success. They achieved unicorn status in their first 7 years. That means they are a privately held company that's valued at more than $1 billion. Given that early success, what are some of the lessons they learned along the way? CEO Schumm says that they made a lot of mistakes, but for him, it is an unexpected hiccup that really stands out.
We had partnered with someone that was critical to our infrastructure. This is going back, probably 2018, 19, that had just decided they're getting out of the business and kind of pulled the plug on it. And it put us in a situation where we're like, no, we're really dependent on that. And I was like, you cannot pull the plug. Or if you're going to pull the plug, you got to wait, right? And leave it there for a minute. So that was a stressful thing, because honestly, at that point in the business, it was still fragile, right? And you still had to, everything had to happen. And when you kind of get knocked to the side in those moments, it becomes all consuming. And those are hard. I mean, I think I went 3 days without sleeping in that moment, right? And it was you're just like, I got to fix this, and no one else is going to fix it for me. So I'm going to do whatever it takes to make this happen, right? And thankfully made it happen, but it was hard. It was really hard, right? I was on the phone with every person, every card I could pull, I need your help right now. So those were moments that I'll smile about now, but in the moment they were awful. You get engaged with some of these larger institutions, and you're like, oh wow, this is going to happen, and might spend a couple of years, and it doesn't happen. Right. And that's part of because we're doing large enterprise, between financial institutions and governments and payroll companies. They're massive organizations, and we can't control those. Right. So a lot of times, you want to be engaged and you spend so much time, but then you just learn not all these things happen. Right. And you learn a lot of these things the hard way. It's not all happy.
When a company is just starting out, being distracted by shiny new objects, so to speak, is a real danger. Doug Magnolia says that to avoid being misled, Vestwell spends a lot of time rationalizing and prioritizing what they will and will not do. And there's a lot of important lessons here.
We're still a relatively young company. We're venture-backed for the most part. And while we have a lot of strategic investors, people have high expectations for us to deliver. And so balancing that need to deliver versus need to fulfill mission, and try to do that in an equal and balanced way, it is hard. And we've certainly done, like every company, we make mistakes, and sometimes you bite off more than you can chew. Or we've pursued partnerships with certain firms that haven't borne any fruit. Didn't live up to what we had both hoped. And so the only thing you do in those situations is kind of learn from that, and then try not to repeat that, or maybe be more tuned to what were the things that created the opportunity in the first place. Why didn't it work out the way we had anticipated? What were things that we could either do both contractually or strategically to make sure there was alignment and commitment to deliver and get to the same place. So I think we've gotten, like anything else, you get better as you do these things, for sure. But we've been pretty good at kind of sticking to our knitting, so to speak, and trying not to be too many things to too many people.
In 2023, Vestwell secured the largest Series D SaaS round in the United States, and in doing so, set a new standard for the fintech community. I asked Logan Allin how he talks to LPs and investors about Vestwell's growth in contrast to the broader fintech world.
we're still going through a pretty meaningful macro contraction with interest rates at elevated levels, stubborn inflation, geopolitical issues, a lot of overhang in the markets. And Vestwell grew tremendously from 21 when we invested through to the present, continues to through a lot of heads down execution and a recognition that people still need to save, even though there's a significant macro challenge, and people are going to be more concerned about their finances, frankly, in that regard. And so that has been tremendous. I also think, some people don't fundamentally understand this. So I'll say it out loud, which is, one of the biggest drivers behind Vestwell's business is that if I'm JP Morgan, one of their partners, and I'm going to an employer and I'm saying, hey, we provide commercial banking and lending for you today, but we want to do more for you. We want to actually offer you 401k, 529. We want to offer you student loan matching. And we want to do that all at one-stop shop through a single platform that is integrated from an experience perspective, gets you advantage fees, and so on and so forth. And in JP Morgan's mind and other bank partners, they're thinking a number of things. One is, obviously, we're deepening the revenue from that relationship, and that's great. It's creating much more stickiness and higher switching costs, because just switching your commercial bank, unless there's a long-term loan there, not that hard. But three, and this is the biggest one, the long tail of the wealth management opportunity. Right. So now I have all these employees who are now working with JP Morgan's 401k powered by Vestwell. And I now have a relationship with them in that 401k. Who do we think they're going to roll their IRA to? Right? Probably JP Morgan or the bank partner. Right. So that stickiness and that longer term opportunity, I think is so fundamental. And that is why I think you saw a lot of growth, a lot of pull through from our partners, because there's such great alignment on incentives and this multi-trillion dollar intergenerational wealth transfer that we have, along with the the savings incentive alignment, and obviously the shift from boomers to millennials and Gen Zers. All those things are tailwinds for the business, and why I think they've been so successful from a growth and scale standpoint. Aaron is building effectively Fidelity turned on its head a little bit, or turned on its side, and operationalized with a full stack software solution. And I think he's an incredible leader. He's continued to surround himself with stronger and stronger leaders. And that's what got us excited about what he's building.
I think a lot of it comes down to, because we just think of the world really from a technology lens, right, and not through, product distribution, which has really been what this industry has been predicated on, which ultimately has, resulted in a disservice to the end user, the end saver, because they're just being sold product, not through the lens of like, hey, what's best for you? Like show me what's best for me based on where I am in my life. And I think that's what's been ignored because of a bunch of reasons. Old technology that's been predicated on, they had to offset the cost of doing business. So it came back to product manufacturing and selling, fun. And we just said, no, everyone should be able to engage. Everyone should be able to save, no matter what it is, whether it's for retirement, whether it's for education, whether it's for healthcare needs. We're going to equip everyone. We're going to not be predicated on selling any asset management. We don't care, right? And meet people where they are. And we could run a great business as Vestwell by not worrying about that. And that, I think, has been eye-opening, and has kind of flipped on the head. It's like, everyone can be in the game. You can all have something tomorrow. It can be yours, your brand, your relationship, your everything, and you have no overhead in the process. And that, I think, people are like, is quite eye-opening. Or like, oh, I'm not going to be forced to sell X product. And they're like, no, it's yours. There's been kind of a disservice, or a lot of firms have just ignored everyone else, right? They chase the big dollars because of how they're compensated and whatnot. And I fully appreciate and understand that. But I don't think people have actually done the math, which we try to show people. I'm like, hey, if you just sell, if you engage with a small business that has 10 employees and everyone's saving, 5-10 grand a year, you're going to blow past $1 million in assets far faster than you're ever going to go sell, individuals that have $1 million portfolio themselves. And that piece, I think, takes a minute for people to really wrap their head around. Like, oh, it just seems like a lot of work, or it's really complicated. And our job, right, as Vestwell, is to make that easy and attainable and said, no, you can do this. And every one of your clients is going to be grateful. Every one of the employees of your clients, who are ultimately the businesses, are going to be grateful. And it's on us as an industry to help, right? That's why we're here, right? We're here to, as financial, advice and whatnot, is give advice to people, walk them through that path. So that piece, I think, is starting to permeate now through the industry, which is great. But it's taken us a long time to get here.
Right now, Vestwell is a unicorn company working to help everyone, even low to moderate income savers. So in the next 5 years, what are they working toward? Logan Allin is thinking about corporate tech possibilities.
Corporate tech for us is players like Apple, who is technically the largest fintech in the world. They have 2 billion devices, and they are the second largest payment processor in the world, and they process trillions of payments through the Apple Wallet. And they need fintech software, right? I would love to see a world. This conversation has never happened, but I'd love to see a world where Vestwell powers Apple's retirement solution.
He's also thinking about future product development that will serve the current and broadening client base.
Today we have, call it 3 or 4 core products. I think broadening that product lineup and continuing to innovate will be important. We believe that there will be continued consolidation in this space, and Vestwell's already announced 2 acquisitions historically, and I think is a tremendous platform and chassis for continuing to do so, and build more and more products, more and more distribution and channel partnerships alongside of it. Aaron very much wants to take Vestwell public at some point, so hopefully we are in a place in 3 to 5 years time where we have that opportunity in front of us, and I think that will create obviously more brand equity, more recognition, more scale, and again more impact. So those are all things I think about in terms of the future for the company, which continues to be incredibly bright.
For CEO Aaron Schumm, thinking about Vestwell's future growth includes reflecting on the successes they've already had before looking to the future.
I tell the team all the time, the hardest stuff is behind us. That's in the rearview mirror. We've already done the hard stuff. Now it's how much, how far can we create a reach to help people? And I think that's kind of where my head is right now. It's what else could we do? So we think about, we started the business, we had 401ks, then we offered 403bs. Then we started doing IRAs. Then we started doing the 529 and the disability ABLE programs. Now we just roll out emergency savings. And then after that, we'll do health savings. I also want to go I want to do the non-ERISA 403bs. So public school teachers, I think really are given a horrible solution. So I think that's something that we could have a huge, impact on. So I kind of think about it in those spheres. In the business, we're funded forever through profitability, through skill. We can kind of do whatever we want at this point. We're just very methodical about how we approach it, so we're not taking off too much at one time, because again, we still got to go back to execute, right? If we don't execute, then we're not helping. We're just kind of at this point just what's really additive to the business, and some of it's opportunistic, some of it's strategic. This thing is on a path to go public in the nearest term. We'll see what happens between now and then and what the markets and the world bring us, but it's been fun because I think the industry has gotten behind us. I feel like everyone has wanted something like this, but it hasn't quite panned out the way they hoped. So they always are kind of let down. And I had a lot of people who were that's an awesome idea. Good luck.
Right.
No one does this. And
I haven't.
Yeah. And now that we've gotten to the point where it works, clients are delighted, everyone's enjoying it, and we see this opportunity that we can go service together. I think that has created a lot of people to get behind us to be okay, how do we help now? So that's a fun spot to be in. I'm having more fun now than I've ever had with this business, right? I think a little bit I can breathe because the business is set up for success. We're kind of running as fast as we can, and now it's just okay, where do we want to go? So there's another opportunity to grow that piece of this. It's kind of like an endless pool that you could swim in to continue to grow these businesses. And people are always well, who wins, right, in this space, right? Especially when you talk to investors. And I kind of, I smile a little bit. I'm well, who won financial services? There's no one winner, right? But it's who can best equip everyone to engage in the most meaningful way possible. And that's where a lot of kind of my focus and attention lies. But I still feel like we're just barely scratching the surface of where we can go with this business.
Vestwell plans to expand their reach and product offerings in the years to come, continuing their mission to lessen the savings gap in America. And they are on track to go public in the next 3 to 5 years. After speaking with the founder and CEO of Vestwell, alongside board members and the president of Vestwell State Savings, here are my top 5 growth takeaways. 1. You don't need to go upmarket to find a profitable audience. As a fintech company, Vestwell serves traditional financial customers and the mass affluent market. But they achieved unicorn status by focusing on the customers that are typically ignored by the industry. People like low to mid-income savers or those who are new to saving entirely. That's their bread and butter, and it got them to unicorn status by finding a real need. 2. Message and mission clarity matter, especially when the product and its delivery is somewhat complex. Vestwell's mission to lessen the American savings gap is clear and well articulated, and that vision gives meaning to their work and energizes the staff. It also taps into an underserved market and attracts new partners to their services. 3. Consumer education done the right way creates demand. Improving the financial literacy of consumers and businesses is a core part of the company. They blend fintech and edtech to empower savers to make better, more informed saving decisions. 4. Volume is a winning factor for profitability. By going after a wide range of potential savers, Vestwell is flipping the financial industry on its head. Typically, financial firms chase big dollars to earn a big payout. But Aaron thinks the industry needs to do the math and see that working with smaller savers and businesses is actually quite profitable and it benefits society. 5. Focus your product, your service, your message on the end user, and you'll never go wrong. The company culture at Vestwell is saver-focused. Humility is encouraged, and the team is driven by mission, not ego. Team members are also given equity in the business, which encourages a feeling of personal ownership and pride in what Vestwell does. I'd love to hear your takeaways from today's episode. Find me on LinkedIn and let me know. And as a reminder, my profile is linked in the show notes. For more valuable growth resources, please visit ficompartners.com/insights. Join us for the next episode when I'm speaking with the leaders from Savant. Until next time, this is Meg Carpenter, CEO and founder of Ficom Partners and your host of Growth Leaders of Wealth Management.